Are we live? It says it's starting. What? Like, it looks fine until the video starts. Oh, okay, now we're live. Hello, ciao, and welcome to our 41st episode of Tuesday Tales of Terror, where we are continuing our journey into Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. And I just skipped ahead a little bit to count pages, and chapter 7 may be the longest chapter in the world. So I feel like we're going to be in chapter 7 for the next 2 parts at least, which is where we are now. This is why I brought it up. I hope that you had a good week so far. Hope something magical has happened to you. Something magical happened to me. I learned how to secure my braids without using elastic hair ties. How does she do it? You'll never know. A witch never reveals her secrets. Let's go. Also, oh, by the way, speaking of that, my friend, my subscriber on YouTube, our Scottish friend, commented and said that my Scottish accent was spot on. They said I did great when I really relaxed into it. They said I could be cast for a Braveheart reboot, which I think is hilarious. Thank you for the Highland compliments. I appreciate it. Oh, we're just everywhere. Okay, get comfy and let us carry on. So, Scarlet has reunited with Bod, and Bod mentioned something about his parents' murder, and that's why he can't go out into the world. And now Scarlet is curious about the murder, and she's asking Mr. Frost about it, who I'm assuming is a local and or is at least aware of things like that. Cheers, mother lovers. I hear you. I'm coming. Come on. Come on, come on. Hi. Hi. Okay. Welcome back. Welcome back. Here we go. Mr. Frost finished off the last of his fried cod. So she asked where to find information about a murder that happened years ago. So, Mr. Frost finished off the last of his fried cod. Library, I suppose. But if it's not on the internet, it'll be in the newspaper files. Off after this. Oh, Scarlet wanted to lie as little as possible. She said, "Oh boy, no. He was talking about it." My energy is up here. I need to bring it down here. "Definitely the library," said Mr. Frost. "Murder. Brr. Gives me the shivers." "Me too," said Scarlet. "A bit. Then hopefully, could you maybe, possibly, drop me off at the library this afternoon?" Mr. Frost bit a large chip in half, chewed it, and looked at the rest of the chip disappointed. "They get cold so fast, don't they, chips? 1 minute you're burning your mouth on them, the next you're wondering how they cool off so quickly." "Oh, I'm sorry," said Scarlet. "I shouldn't be asking for rides everywhere." "Not at all," said Mr. Frost. "Just wondering how best to organise this afternoon, and whether or not your mother likes chocolate. Bottle of wine or chocolate? Not really sure. Both maybe." "I can make my own way home from the library," said Scarlet. "And she loves chocolates." "So do I. I can't tonight." "Chocolates it is, then," said Mr. Frost, relieved. They had reached the middle of the row of high terraced houses on the hill, and the little green Minnie parked outside. "Get in! I'll run you over to the library." The library was a square building, all brick and stone. dating back to the beginning of the last century. Scarlett looked around and then went up to the desk. The woman said, "Yes?" Scarlett said, I wanted to see some old newspaper clippings." "Is it for school?" said the woman. "It's local history," said Scarlett, nodding, proud that she hadn't actually lied. "We've got the local paper on microfiche." She was large and had silver hoops in her ears. Scarlett could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She was certain she looked guilty or suspicious, but the woman led her into a room with boxes that looked like computer screens and showed her how to use them to project a page of the newspaper at a time onto the screen. "One day we'll have it all digitized," said the woman. "Now, what dates are you after?" About 13 or 14 years ago," said Scarlett. "I can't be more specific than that. I'll know it when I see it." The woman gave Scarlett a small box with 5 years' worth of newspapers on microfilm in it. "Go wild," she said. Scarlett assumed that the murder of a family would have been front-page news, but instead, when she eventually found it, it was almost buried on page 5. It had happened in October, 13 years earlier. There was no color in the article, no description, just an understated list of events. Architect Ronald Dorian, 36, his wife Carlotta, 34, a publisher, and their daughter Misty, 7, were found dead at 33 Dunstan Road. Foul play is suspected. A police spokesman said that it was too early to comment at this stage in their investigations, but that significant leads are being followed. There was no mention of how the family died, and nothing said about a missing baby. In the weeks that followed, there was no follow-up, and the police did not ever comment, not that Scarlett could see. But that was it. She was certain. 33 Dunstan Road. She knew the house. She had been there. She returned the box of microfilm to the front desk, thanked the librarian, and walked home in the April sunshine. Her mother was in the kitchen cooking, not entirely successfully, judging from the smell of burnt bottom of the saucepan that filled most of the flat. Scarlett retreated to her bedroom and opened the windows wide to let the burnt smell out. Then she sat on her bed and made a phone call. "Hello? Mr. Frost?" "Scarlett! Everything still all right for this evening? How's your mother?" "Oh, it's all under control," said Scarlett, which was what her mother had said when she had asked. Mr. Frost, how long have you lived at your house?" "How long? About 4 months now." "How did you find it?" "Estate agent's window. It was empty, and I could afford it. Well, more or less. Well, I wanted something within walking distance of the graveyard, and this was perfect." "Mr. Frost?" Scarlett wondered how to say it, and then just said it. "About 13 years ago, 3 people were murdered in your house. The Dorian family." There was a silence at the other end of the phone. "Mr. Frost? Are you there?" Well, still here, Scarlett. Sorry. Not the sort of thing you expect to hear. It is an old house. I mean, you expect things to happen a long time ago, but not... Well, what happened?" Scarlett wondered how much she could tell him. She said, "There was a little piece on it in an old newspaper. It only gave the address and nothing else. I'm done. I'm not doing a Scottish accent anymore. I'm so over it. I don't know how they died or anything." "Oh, good Lord!" Mr. Frost sounded more intrigued by the news than Scarlett would have expected. "This young Scarlett is where we local historians come into our own. Leave it with me. I'll find out everything I can and report back." "Oh, thank you," said Scarlett, relieved. I assume this phone call is because if Nuna thought there were murders going on in my home, even 13-year-old ones, you'd never be allowed to see me or the graveyard again. So I suppose I won't mention it unless you do." "Oh, thank you, Mr. Frost. See you at 7, with chocolates." Dinner was remarkably pleasant. The burnt smell had gone from the kitchen. The chicken was good. The salad was better. The roast potatoes were too crispy, but a delighted Mr. Frost had proclaimed that this was precisely the way he liked them, and had taken a second helping. The flowers were popular. The chocolates, which they had for dessert, were perfect, and Mr. Frost sat and talked, then watched television with them until about 10 p.m., when he said that he needed to get home. Time, tide, and historical research wait for no man, he said. He shook Nuna's hand with enthusiasm, winked at Scarlet conspiratorially, and was out the door. Scarlet tried to find Bod in her dreams that night. She thought of him as she went to sleep, imagined herself walking the graveyard looking for him, but when she did dream, it was of wandering around Glasgow city centre with her friends from her old school. They were hunting for a specific street, but all they found was a succession of dead ends, one after another. Deep beneath the hill in Krakow, in the deepest vault beneath the caves they call the Dragon's Den, Miss Lupescu stumbled and fell. Silas crouched beside her and cradled Miss Lupescu's head in his hands. There was blood on her face, and some of it was hers. "You must leave me," she said. "Save the boy." She was halfway now, halfway between grey wolf and woman, but her face was a woman's face. "No," said Silas. "I won't leave you." Behind him, Kandar cradled its piglet like a child might hold a doll. The mummy's left wing was shattered, and it would never fly again, but its bearded face was implacable. "They will come back, Silas," Miss Lupescu whispered. "Too soon the sun will rise." "Then," said Silas, "you must deal with them before they are ready to attack. Can you stand?" "Da, I am one of the hounds of God," said Miss Lupescu. "I will stand." She lowered her face into the shadows, flexed her fingers. When she raised her head again, it was a wolf's head. She put her paws down on the rock and laboriously pushed herself up into a standing position, a grey wolf bigger than a bear, her coat and muzzle flecked with blood. She threw back her head and howled a howl of fury and of challenge. Something like that. Her lips curled back from her teeth, and she lowered her head once more. "Now," growled Miss Lupescu, "we end this." Late on Sunday afternoon, the telephone rang. Scarlet was sitting downstairs, laboriously copying faces from the manga she had been reading onto scrap paper. Her mother picked up the phone. "Funny, we were just talking about you," said her mother, although they hadn't been. "It was wonderful," her mother continued. "I had the best time. Honestly, it was no trouble." I can't. I'm lost in the accents. I'm lost. Too much dialogue, Neil Gaiman. My brain is tired. Okay, let's start this one over. Scarlet's mom. She's not exactly Scottish because she just lived in Scottish for a few years. So I think she's English who has lived in Scottish. So it doesn't have to be exactly Scottish. Let's continue. "Funny, we were just talking about you," said her mother, although they hadn't been. "It was wonderful," her mother continued. "I had the best time. Honestly, it was no trouble. The chocolates? They were perfect. Just perfect. I told Scarlett to tell you. Anytime you want a good dinner, you just let me know." And then, "Scarlett?" "Yes, she's here." "I'll put her on. Scarlett!" "I'm just here, Mum," said Scarlett. "We won't have to shout." She took the phone. "Mr. Frost?" "Scarlett!" He sounded excited. The thing we were talking about. The thing that happened in my house. You can tell this friend of yours that I found out. Listen, when you said a friend of yours, did you mean it in the sense of we're actually talking about you, or is there a real person? If it's not a personal question. "I've got a real friend who wants to know," said Scarlett, amused. Her mother shot her a puzzled look. "Tell your friend that I did some digging. Not literally, more like rummaging. Well, a fair amount of actual looking around, and I think I might have unearthed some very real information. Stumbled over something hidden. Well, not something I think we should spread around. I found things out." "Like what?" asked Scarlett. "Look, don't think I'm mad, but as far as I can tell, 3 people were killed. One of them, the baby, I think, wasn't. It wasn't a family of 3, it was a family of 4. Only 3 of them died. Tell him to come and see me, your friend, and I'll fill him in." "Oh, tell him," said Scarlet. She put down the phone, her heart beating like a snare. Bod walked down the narrow stone stairs for the first time in 6 years. His footsteps echoed in the chamber inside the hill. He reached the bottom of the steps and waited for the Sleer to manifest. And he waited and waited, but nothing appeared, nothing whispered, nothing moved. He looked around the chamber, untroubled by the deep darkness, seeing it as the Dead Sea. He walked over to the altar stone set in the floor where the cup and the brooch and the stone knife sat. He reached down and touched the edge of the knife. It was sharper than he had expected, and it nicked the skin of his finger. "It is the treasure of the Sleer," whispered a triple voice, but it sounded smaller than he remembered, more hesitant. Bod said, "You're the oldest thing here. I came to talk to you. I want advice." A pause. "Nothing comes to the Sleer for advice. The Sleer guards. The Sleer waits." "I know, but Silas isn't here, and I don't know who else to talk to." Nothing was said, just a silence in reply that echoed of dust and loneliness. "I don't know what to do," Bod said honestly. "I think I can find out about who killed my family, who wanted to kill me. It means leaving the graveyard, though." The Sleer said nothing. Smoke tendrils twined slowly around the inside of the chamber. "I'm not frightened of dying," said Bod. "It's just so many people I care for have spent so much time keeping me safe, teaching me, protecting me." Again, silence. Then he said, "I have to do this on my own." "Yes." "That's all then. I'm sorry I bothered you." It whispered into Bod's head then, in a voice that was a sleek, insinuating glide. "The Sleer was set to guard the treasure until our master returned. Are you our master?" "No," said Bod. And then with a hopeful whine, "Will you be our master?" "I'm afraid not." "If you were our master, we could hold you in our coils forever. If you were our master, we would keep you safe and protect you until the end of time and never let you endure the dangers of the world." "I am not your master." "No." Bod felt the Sleer writhing through his mind. Oops. It said, "Then find your name." And his mind was empty, and the room was empty, and Bod was alone. Come on. Bod walked back up the stairs carefully, yet quickly. He had come to a decision and needed to act fast, while the decision still burned in his mind. Wow. Scarlet was waiting for him on the bench by the chapel. "Well?" she said. "I'll do it. Come on," he said, and side by side they walked the path down to the graveyard gates. Number 33 was a tall house, spindly thin, in the middle of a terraced row. Come on. There we go. It was red brick and unmemorable. Bod looked at it uncertainly, wondering why it did not seem familiar or special. It was only a house, like any other. There was a small concreted space in front of it that wasn't a garden. A green Mini parked on the street. The front door had once been painted a bright blue, but had been dimmed by time and the sun. "Well?" said Scarlet. Bod knocked on the door. There was nothing, then a clatter of feet on the stairs from inside, and the door opened to reveal an entryway and stairs. Framed in the doorway was a bespectacled man with receding gray hair, who blinked at them, then stuck out his hand at Bod, and smiled nervously and said, "You must be Miss Bacon's mysterious friend. Good to meet you." "This is Bod," said Scarlet. "Bob?" "Bod, with a D," she said. "Bod, this is Mr. Frost." Bod and Frost shook hands, hand on hand. "Kettle's on," said Mr. Frost. "What say we swap information over a cuppa?" They followed him up the steps to a kitchen, where he poured 3 mugs of tea, then led them into a small sitting room. "The house just keeps going up," he said. "The toilet's on the next floor up, and my office, then bedroom above that. Keeps you fit, all the stairs." They sat on a large, extremely purple sofa. "He was already here when I came," and they sipped their tea. Scarlet had worried that Mr. Frost would ask Bod lots of questions, but he didn't. He just seemed excited, as if he had identified the lost gravestone as someone famous, and desperately wanted to tell the world. He kept moving impatiently in his chair, as if he had something enormous to impart to them, and not blurting it out immediately was a physical strain. Scarlet said, "So what did you find out?" Mr. Frost said, "Well, you were right. I mean, this was the house where those people were killed, and I think the crime was, well, not exactly hushed up, but forgotten about. Let go by the authorities." "I don't understand," said Scarlet. Murders don't get swept under the carpet." "This one was," said Frost. He drained his tea. "There are people out there who have influence. It's the only explanation for that, and for what happened to the youngest child." "And what was that?" asked Bod. "He lived. I'm sure of it. But there wasn't a manhunt. A missing toddler normally would be national news, but they must have squashed it somehow." "Who are they?" "The same people who had the family killed." "Do you know any more than that?" "Well, yes, a little." Frost trailed off. "I'm sorry. Look, given what I found, it's all too incredible." Scarlet was starting to feel frustrated. What did you find?" Frost looked shamefaced. "You're right. I'm sorry. Getting into keeping secrets, not a good idea. Historians don't bury things. We dig them up. Show people. Yes." He stopped, hesitated. Then he said, "I found a letter. Upstairs. It was hidden under a loose floorboard." He turned to Bod. "Young man, would I be incorrect in assuming your interest in this business, this dreadful business, is personal?" Bod nodded. "I won't ask any more," said Mr. Frost, and he stood up. Whoop. Pages work like that. "Come on," he said to Bod. "Not you, though," he said to Scarlet. "Not yet. I'll show him, and if he says it all right, I'll show you. Deal?" "Deal," said Scarlet. "We won't be long," said Mr. Frost. "Come on, lad." Bod stood up, darted a concerned look at Scarlet. "It's okay," she said, and smiled at him as reassuringly as she could. "I'll wait here for you." She watched their shadows as they walked out of the room and up the stairs. She felt nervous, but expectant. She wondered what Bod would learn, and was happy that he would learn it first. It was his story, after all. It was his right. Out on the stairs, Mr. Frost led the way. Bod looked around as he looked up toward the top of the house, but nothing seemed familiar. It all seemed strange. "All the way to the very top." They went up another flight of stairs. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but you are the boy, aren't you?" Bod said nothing. "Here we are." He turned the key in the door at the top of the house, pushed it open, and they went inside. The room was small, an attic room with a sloping ceiling. 13 years before, it had held a crib. It barely held the man and the boy. "Stroke of luck, really. Under my own nose, so to speak." He crouched down, pulled back the threadbare carpet.
"So you know why my family were murdered?" asked Bod. "It's all in here."
He reached down to a short length of floorboard and pushed at it until he was able to lever it out.
"This would have been the baby's room. I'll show you the... the only thing we don't know is just who did it. Nothing at all. We don't have the tiniest clue."
"Oh, we know he has dark hair," said Bod, in the room that had once been his bedroom.
"And we know that his name is Jack."
Mr. Frost put his hand down into the empty space where the floorboard had been.
"It's been almost 13 years. And hair gets thin and goes grey in 13 years. But yes, that's right. It is Jack."
He straightened up. The hand that had been in the hole in the floor was holding a large, sharp knife.
"Now," said the man Jack. "Now, boy, time to finish this."
Bod stared at him. It was as if Mr. Frost had been a coat or a hat the man had been wearing that he had now discarded. The affable exterior had gone. The light glinted on the man's spectacles and on the blade of the knife. I just got chills over my entire body. What the fuck? Beep! A voice called up to them further down the stairs. Scarlett's. "Mr. Frost, Miss Frost. There's someone knocking at the front door. Should I get it?" The man Jack only glanced away for a moment, but Bod knew that the moment was all he had, and he faded as completely, as utterly as he could. The man Jack looked back to where Bod had been, then stared around the room, puzzlement and rage competing on his face. He took a step further into the room, his head swinging from side to side like an old tiger scenting prey.
"You're here somewhere," growled the man Jack. "I can smell you."
Behind him, the little door to the attic bedroom slammed closed, and as he swung around, he heard the key turn in the lock. The man Jack raised his voice.
"It buys you moments, but it won't stop me, boy," he called through the locked door, then added simply, "We have unfinished business, you and I."
Okay, and actually, we are going to stop there because if I go any further, I'm going to stress myself out. But, yeah. Wow, what a crazy turn of events. What? Okay, I'm totally baffled. Neil Gaiman, you blew my mind with that one. I never would have suspected that Mr. Frost and Jack were the same person. Although, knowing that there's only 50 pages left in the book, I should have assumed that something was going to happen. Which I did, of course, but not that. Wow. Anyway, we are going to stop here. And I'm going to put a little pencil mark like we do. And apologies for not practicing the Scottish accent this week and for completely bumbling it. You know who you are. I'm sorry. I don't like to say sorry, so there we are. Cool. Thanks for being here. And next Tuesday is week 42. And that'll be it. I would have gone on, but I don't want to start something that I can't finish. Anyway, we're gonna have an early night tonight. Thank you for being here. You're made of magic and stardust. The love, the light, the magic in me. Season honors the love, the light, and the magic in you. Little love, little peace. Stay spooky, my creatures. Drink your water, and I will see you this time, this place, next week. Goodbye. Ciao.